Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes.
The glass candles are burning, and you're listening to the Obsidian Nights Podcast. Hello, my sweet summer children. I'm back with the juice to get you through the long night. And today I'm back with another episode of the Obsidian Nights Podcast, where we go through A Song of Ice and Fire chapter by chapter, trying to reveal all the clues, all the foreshadowing, all the hidden tea. If you are listening to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, please rate this podcast. Let me know how I'm doing. And today we will be covering Jon 7, and I have special guests. My special guest is Arah. Hey, Arah, would you like to tell the people who you are and where they can find you? They probably know you by now, but tell them all the tea.
Yeah, just in case you do not know me by now, my name is Arah, aka iEatZebra. You can find me Friday nights on Direwolf City, 10 p.m. on Gray Area's YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, please come see us on Friday nights where we're talking all things wins. I also am launching my YouTube channel, which is also iEatZebra, because I'm not creative. So that's where you can find me on all platforms. And my first video that I'm uploading, it's sorting the characters of Snowfall. So I hope you guys enjoy.
Yes, Snowfall. I heard it's really good. I have not watched it yet. I'm going to be watching it, and then I'm going to be checking out your video because I want to know the sortings of the characters.
Yeah, so actually with the video that I'm posting, I'm not doing any major spoilers.
Oh, cool.
Just for that reason, because I know not everybody has seen Snowfall. So it's kind of just an overview of some of the main characters and their traits and personalities, without getting too much into their backstory. So for those who haven't seen the show, maybe get them a little bit more interested. I highly recommend it if you have not watched Snowfall. It is phenomenal. It's probably like some of the best TV I've seen in a long time. So
I've heard really good things about it.
It's on FX, just in case you want to know.
Yep. So check out Snowfall. Check out Arah's channel at iEatZebra. And you can also find her on Twitter at iEatZebra. And today we're going to be talking about Jon Snow. And this chapter is full of juice, like straight up. I can't even lie. We got Wights. We got people coming back from the dead. Jon getting some crazy news. Jon saving lives out here. Like, it is getting... Like, we're to the point of the book, and matter of fact, like, fun fact, we're almost through a Game of Thrones. But this chapter, I feel like it's really starting to go down. I don't think there's any chapters from this point on that aren't packed with action. Like, I know there's been some chapters where it's kind of dry, and now it's not that. Especially not this chapter. So this chapter starts out, it says, Othor, announced Sir Jeremy Riker, beyond a doubt. And this one is Jaffer Flowers. He turned the corpse over with his foot, and the dead white face stared up at the overcast sky with blue eyes. They were Ben Stark's men, both of them. My uncle's men? Jon thought numbly. He remembered how he pleaded to ride with them. Gods, I was such a green boy. If he had taken me, it might be me lying here. Jaffer's right wrist ended in the ruin of torn flesh and splintered bone left by ghost jaws. His right hand was floating in a jar of vinegar back in the Maester Aemon's towers. His left hand, still at the end of his arm, was as black as his cloak. Benjen, earlier in the book, went out for arranging to try to find Sir Waymore Royce. And now Benjen's missing, and two of his men are dead. And it was Ghost that found these corpses. So he brought the hand to Jon in the last Jon chapter. So there's so much going on when it comes to these Wights, because they're going to come back as Wights. They're not just dead men. And it's only two. We only have 2 bodies. And we know that Benjen Stark took 6 people with him. But we only have 2 bodies. And these bodies are close to the wall. Like, where they find these bodies, they find them pretty close to the wall.
Yeah, I believe it's half a day's ride to the wall, because they found them, figure where they're going to take their vows in the grove where the heart trees are in the haunted forest. Such a clever name, George.
Yes.
But when you think about it, we'll get to it a little bit later, it's like, how did they arrive here? It's kind of like the big question for the Jon and the rest of the Night's Watchmen that are finding these bodies. It's like, these are our men that have been missing for about 6 months. So it's been half a year that they've been gone. And how are we just now finding them this close to the wall?
Yes.
And when, like, for me personally, like, this chapter shows how great of a horror writer that George is, as well as like the descriptions. Like, rereading it, I started gagging at points. Like, some of his descriptions, it really puts you into the scene. And it's just like just the way he describes like the eyes, like I can see that haunting blue eye like in my mind.
Yeah.
And it really sends like shivers down your spine, and it's so good.
In the last chapter I did with Simone Black, we talked about how George was so fucking good at horror, and how the last chapter and this chapter, like, they could have been a short story. Like, they could have been a short horror story, those two, like, these 2 chapters together. And this one is like the way that he describes like just the ominous feeling in the air, like the horses hating it, the dogs like going crazy. Like, it says the dogs liked it least of all. Ghost had led the party here. The pack of hounds had been useless. When Bass, the kennel master, had tried to get them to take the scent from the severed hand, they had gone wild, yowling and barking, fighting to get away. Even now, they were snarling and whimpering by turns, pulling at their leashes while Chet cursed them for curs. It is only a wood, Jon told himself, and they're only dead men. He had seen dead men before. So he's thinking, like, Jon's like, this is only the woods. Like, why are you guys tripping? And this is only, like, dead people. Why are you tripping? But it's more than that. It's more than that. That's not just why they're tripping.
Yeah, and it's also very telling how he says Ghost is the one that brought them to the scene.
Yeah.
And that Ghost is the only animal that will go near them. And in my opinion, and I'm going to mention it now because I want to get out the way, it's Bloodraven. It's all Bloodraven. Bloodraven does everything. He controls everything. But yeah, no, I'm mad creepy. I'm like, it's all Bloodraven.
Bloodraven is in Ghost.
Yeah, but I think that's Bloodraven literally in Ghost leading them, because obviously he wants to assist them in the war for the Dawn that's inevitably coming their way. So
yeah.
For him for Ghost to be the one to not only find the hand, but when it's time to go back, Ghost is the one that's leading the way, and Ghost is like the only animal that's not even just animal. He's kind of the first one to just be close to the bodies to kind of be like, hey guys, look, this isn't right. Like, hint, hint, hint. The others are coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm not going to say like, yeah, I think it's Bloodraven. I think it very well could be Bloodraven, but I definitely think that there is some supernatural thing going on with Ghost, because Ghost leads Jon to the Dragon Glass as well. Like, Ghost is always one step ahead. So there is either someone interfering, like a Bloodraven, some child of the forest, someone is doing something, or it's just something magical that or it's just like Ghost himself, like kind of like how Drogon knows when Dany's in trouble, like when
Pit.
Yeah, like
that makes sense.
I feel
like I think it's Bloodraven just because I like.
I mean, it's way more interesting that it's Bloodraven.
It is, and not only that, I recently reread Dunk and Egg, and now I'm like, yeah, no, it is all Bloodraven.
Yeah. Duncan Egg does so much for Bloodraven's character, like, not even
It
kidding.
really does. I'm like, he's one of my favorites, to be quite honest. And I also think he has something to do with Mormont's Raven a little bit later on in the chapter, but we'll get to that.
I definitely think that's Bloodraven, Mormont to Raven. So Jon says, last night he had dreamt the Winterfell dream again. He was wandering the empty castle, searching for his father, descending into the crypts. Only this time, the dream had gone further than before. In the dark, he'd heard the scrape of stone on stone. When he turned, he saw that the vaults were opening, one after the other. As the dead kings came stumbling from their cold black graves, Jon had woken in pitch dark, his heart hammering. Even when Ghost leapt up on the bed to nuzzle at his face, he could not shake his deep sense of terror. He dared not go back to sleep. Instead, he had climbed the wall and walked restless until he saw the light of dawn off to the east. It was only a dream. I am a brother of the Night's Watch now, not a frightened boy. What do you think are the implications of that dream? Because I have several thoughts.
Oh my gosh, I'm so ready for this paragraph. But one thing I thought was that jumped out at me just hearing it again is the fact that Jon, Rickon, and Bran, whenever there's major like crisis moments with Ned, they all have dreams of the crypts.
Yes.
Like something in their dream draws them to the crypt. Like when Bran and Rickon have the same dream, when we find out Ned dies, like, well, I should say when they find out Ned dies, like they both had like, oh, father was in the crypt. And it's like, wait, how do you know that? And then for Jon to have this dream, and well, we're about to talk about it anyways, but when he eventually finds out like, oh, Ned's been arrested for treason, the king is dead. What I think is interesting is one of the first things he hears is the king is dead, and he just had a dream about dead kings coming back and crawling out of their graves. And I'm like, and you're about to like deal with like the undead at the same time. I'm like, oh, there's so much going on.
Yeah. So I kind of felt that same thing. Like, yeah, Rickon and Bran and Jon, like Ned is in trouble. And Jon is having this dream where he's looking for Ned, of all places, in the crypts. And Ned is like never going to leave that dungeon again. And when he does, he's going to die. Spoiler alert. But another thing that kind of like made my eyebrows raise up a little bit was the fact that the dead are like, he hears the scrape on stone on stone, and these vaults are opening and the dead kings are coming out of their cold black graves. And I feel like that is some significance to this specific chapter, because these men are going to rise up out of their graves. They're going to rise as Wights. And I also think that it's significant to Winterfell that Jon doesn't necessarily know is that ritual, that Stark burial ritual with the statues and the iron swords. I feel like there is something to that. Like, I feel like the iron swords really keep the Wights or the corpses from rising, because Ned says in a beginning chapter, like, the reason that the iron swords are laid on the laps is to keep the spirits in the grave so they can't wander the castle. Like, he talks about one of the swords being rusted away, and he was like, oh, I hope that spirit isn't free to roam the castle. So I feel like there is a lot of significance there, and I feel like it's not a coincidence that he had this dream. If he had this dream, he was sent this dream.
Yes, I could definitely see him being sent the dream as a way of them kind of communicating to him through the like werewood net, as we like to call it, to give him these premonitions. But I do think the iron swords definitely will, are meant maybe to keep the spirits at bay, because possibly a curse that was placed on them. Like the dead kings of winter, kind of like the dead man of Dunharrow.
Yes.
From Lord of the Rings. Like, maybe like there's some type of oath that they need to keep. Like, maybe not that on the nose, but something kind of like the iron swords are part of that, like a ritual, like you mentioned, like to keep them at bay. But one thing I
Yes.
wanted to mention with that description with the stone on stone and the coming out of the vaults,
Mm-hmm.
and once you read it, because I obviously looking back at the chapter, when kind of going forward a little bit, when Othar comes back, Jon says that was when he heard it, the soft scrape of a boot on stone. It's specific, like
Mm-hmm.
just stone coming back, and the fact that earlier he's talking about in his dream that he heard stone on stone. So like I feel like George is very tactful with what words he uses and when he uses them. So I feel like that was foreshadowing for pretty much the events that happen later in this chapter of the dead rising out of their vault that they were kept in.
Yeah, and it basically points to some supernatural person or thing trying to help Jon, trying to lead Jon with this dream. We got that thing from Melisandre that sleep is a little death, dreams are whispers from the others or from the great other. But what Melisandre thinks is the great other is actually Bloodraven.
Oh, I know. And it makes me like really intrigued as to their relationship.
Yes.
I
So
think there's something there.
it could be Bloodraven trying to tell Jon like these motherfuckers are gonna come back. they're not they're not dead. So Samuel Tarly is there and he's like really scared, like he's hiding behind horses, like he doesn't want to look, and Jon is like, look, there's a dozen rangers here, there's dogs, like even Ghost is here, like nobody's gonna hurt you, you can look. And he does actually look, but he's still fucking scared.
Mentioning Sam and Jon telling him to look.
Mm-hmm.
On Nauticast, they kind of brought up how the parallel with that scene in Bran in the opening chapter when Jon's telling Bran, like, you have to look when Ned's going to execute the deserter, and the fact that both situations revolve around soon to be and or already dead Brothers of the Night's Watch is very interesting.
Oh, that is
And both
interesting.
situations are related to the others because the reason why I always mix it up because in the show it's one of them, in the book it's the other one, between Garrett and Will.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever one it is in the books. That's not the show because the show did the opposite.
It's Garrett in the books.
That's what I thought. Okay, Garrett in the books. But when Garrett, he's saying, he's like, the others are back, kind of like warning them, like, like that's why I ran. And Jon, and I remember, I think Bran's the one who's like, oh, do you guys believe him? And they're like, I don't know. That's like an old man tale. So for Jon, 6 months later, maybe 7 months tops, for this to like, I imagine he's probably thinking of that moment as well. Like, oh man, that dude was right. My dad kind of killed the guy that was right.
That's actually a really good point. Lord Mormont is like, why didn't they blow the horn? Like they have a horn and we would have heard it from here. Why didn't they blow the horn? And they're kind of like bickering back and forth, trying to figure out like what actually happened, like what actually went wrong. They're talking about not having enough horses to like not having enough mounts to actually guard the wall like they want to. It comes off to me as bickering. It's like bickering.
Actually, what I really like about it is I hate when I have like a supervisor or a manager tell me why I didn't do something, and it's like, I was listening to you. So when Sir Jeremy Riker is like, he's like, we've stayed closer to the wall that we were wont to do before by your own command. I love that because it's like, I was just doing what you told me to do. So why are you yelling at me for following your orders? I liked that moment. Like,
yeah, I mean that is true.
But at the same time, it's like I get the situation on both ends. It's like, how did we miss this? So they're all kind of like confused, and then our boy Sam coming through, being the Maester's eyes, and
right. So they don't know. They don't know like what happened, right? They're like the wildlings could have done it. The wildlings have axes, and they're like, do you think it was Mance Rayder? Like, and they're like, this close to the wall. Who else could it be? And then Jon says, Jon could have told him. He knew, they all knew, yet no man of them would say the words. The others are only a story, a tale to make children shiver. If they ever lived at all, they are gone 8,000 years. Even the thought made him feel foolish. He was a man grown now, a black brother of the Night's Watch, not the boy who'd once sat at old Nan's feet with Bran and Robb and Arya. Yet Lord Commander Mormont gave a snort. If Ben Stark had come under wildling attack a half a day's ride from Castle Black, he would have returned for more men, chased the killers through all 7 hells, and brought me back their heads. Unless he was slain as well, Sir Jeremy insisted. But, okay, so they're debating. Jon thinks it's the others already, but he feels silly saying it. And Jon believes that they think it's the others as well. And I feel like Lord Mormont and Maester Aemon are kind of like in that Tyrion chapter where Tyrion is at the wall and they're talking to Tyrion about needing more men at the wall. They kind of had the feeling that the others are coming rising. Back. Yeah, and when they're looking at it in the face, they just.
One thing I think is really, really interesting, just because, I cannot resist a good Sansa slander. But the fact that he said the people sitting at old Nan's feet were Bran, Robb, and Arya. Rickon gets a pass because he's 3. But I think it's interesting because, including Jon, I think all of them have more common sense than Sansa, because they listened to all the scary old Nan stories while she was listening to all the frilly knights and pretty stuff that Septa Mordain was teaching her. Shout out to old Nan.
I mean,
because that's where I would be sitting, because old Nan knows everything.
I think you're right. I think that's true. I would be sitting with old Nan too. Sansa was knitting and listening to knights and lady fair shit.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, we get to learn about like the others. Let's go. But I think it's really interesting that you said, well, kind of like between him going through what Maester Luwin told him versus what old Nan told him, and that kind of being the situation that's happening at hand, where it's like the rest of them are thinking more like Maester Luwin, like, no, that doesn't exist. That's not it. It can't be it. Where Jon, Mormont, and maybe a few others are probably, I think, more seasoned Night's Watch members are probably leaning towards that old Nan supernatural, like, no, this is what we think it is. Like, it's time. Like, they're here. This is what the wall was built for. This is what we were meant to do. So the time has come. And like when Mormont says, like, we really needed a strong king for this, like, it's very, very ominous. Like, just the scene that George is saying, just like the deeper and deeper you get into like this part of the chapter, I feel like that feeling of the other, like that weight of the inevitable comes back, because we haven't had it in quite a while.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, because it is, and we're getting to see it unfold. Like, we're getting to see it unfold. We're getting to see the doubters try to talk their self out of the reality of the situation. And Sam comes in, like you said, with the tea. Sam is like, they can't have been dead for a day. What'd he say? He said, my lords, it can't be a day. Or look, the blood. Yes, Mormont growled impatiently. Blood, what of it? He soils his small clothes at the sight of it, Chet shouted out, and the Rangers laughed. Sam mopped at the sweat on his brow. You can see where goes Jon's direwolf. You can see where he tore off the man's hand, and yet the stump hasn't bled. Look, he waved a hand. My father, Lord Randall, he made me watch him dress animals sometimes when after Sam's like all scared and shit. And he's basically, he's basically so like a fresh kill. The blood would still flow, my lords. Later it would be clotted like a jelly, thick, and he looked as though he was going to be sick. This man, look at his wrist. It's all crusty, dry like. And then Jon's like, yeah. And then they're like, if they'd been dead much longer than a day, they'd be right by now, boy. They don't even smell. And it's like, aha. Why don't they smell? And Sam is like, they aren't rotting. They aren't rotting. There's no maggots. There's no worms. There's nothing.
The animals won't touch them. They've been completely undisturbed. And it's like fresh meat this north in a woods going, like, being there that long without being touched. Like, that's very alarming.
Right. And it's only ghost that will touch them. It's only ghost that isn't afraid of them.
Also, I don't like Chet, just throwing that out there. But
like, girl, who does? I'd like to beat his ass myself.
He ends up getting what's coming to him. So
yeah, he's gonna bite it.
But one thing I really like about this moment is Sam actually like showing how smart and useful he is, kind of proving Jon's point when a few chapters back when he's talking to Maester Aemon, like, just because he's not a fighter or something doesn't mean he can't be useful here.
Right.
He can read, he can write, like, he's very smart. Like, trust me, we need men like him. And if it weren't for Sam, I think Mormont probably still would have looked into it, but I think the rest of them would not have caught on as fast if it was not for Sam.
Yeah, they wouldn't have. Like, Sam's making very good points, and he is proving Jon right. Like, you're right about that. He's proven Jon right. Like, Jon was smart by choosing Sam to help Maester Aemon. Sam's like, look, these wounds are bad. There should be blood everywhere. And then they say, it might be I'm a fool, but I don't know that Othor ever had blue eyes. And then Sir Jeremy looks startled and says, neither did flowers. And they both stare at the dead men. It says, a silence fell over the wood. For a moment, all they heard was Sam's heavy breathing and the wet sound of Tywin sucking on his teeth. Jon squatted beside Ghost. Burn them, someone whispered. One of the rangers. Jon could not have said who. Yes, burn them, a second voice urged. So that silence that fell over the wood, they know what these are. They know.
Yeah, that's why they say to burn.
And that's why they immediately were like, burn them.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we still don't know who said it.
Nope.
And at first I was like, maybe. Then the fact that Mormont acknowledged it, I was like, okay, maybe not. Because like, oh, Blood Raven, but no. False alarm. But I think it's very interesting that they know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how many times before Jon got here have the others been encountered recently?
Right.
Because I'm like, is it common knowledge? Like, I don't think we know if it's common knowledge that burning them is effective. Because clearly Jon, who grew up in the North, raised in the North, grew up on Old Nan's tales, like when we get to it at the end of the chapter, he starts hacking at it, eventually burning it, but well, I'll get to when he burns it. I'm not get too ahead of myself.
So Mormont doesn't want to burn the bodies. He's like, not yet. I want Maester Aemon to look at them when we'll bring them back to the wall. So it says, when they were going back to the wall, it says, the day was gray, damp, and overcast, the sort of day that made you wish for rain. No wind stirred the wood. The air hung humid and heavy, and Jon's clothes clung to his skin. It was warm, too warm. The wall was weeping copiously, had been weeping for days, and sometimes Jon even imagined it was shrinking. So I want to talk about that. So I feel like it's interesting that in this chapter where we're getting actual Wights being brought back to the wall, Jon sees the wall as weeping and shrinking. And I don't want to say like shrinking in a physical sense, but shrinking as in, I don't know how to put
Maybe
it.
losing some of its power, like protection.
Not even, I mean, that too, but more like the closer the White Walkers get, like the White Walkers are close as fuck to the wall at this point. And it's like as closer they get figuratively, the wall gets smaller.
Speaking of them getting close, do you think that Other and Jafer, do you think how do you think they got there?
I think they were trying to run back to the wall.
Like, oh, so like you really do think they were killed in that spot?
Yeah.
So you think the others are really that close?
Yeah. I think they were trying to run back to the wall. Because I think like the others can only come out at night. So I wouldn't be surprised if they killed them right there and that was the spot that they found them. Just those two. Like, I feel like, because so we have Garrett, like the first time we see the others kill people, they kill Waymore Royce, and then Waymore Royce as a white kills Will, but Garrett manages to run back and get south of the wall. Othor and Jafer Flowers were trying to run back to the wall, is my opinion. What do you think?
Oh, so that's personally, I think that's more kind of my opinion as well, that they were trying to escape. And the other thing I'm thinking of is if they were being sent as a message, just because what happens later on in the chapter, the fact that it seems like he knows who his target is. So
yes.
It's like, are they purposely being sent to infiltrate, get through the wall, and like pretty much put a hit? Like, is this like the others, the Whiters, like hierarchy, if they even have a hierarchy, whatever their little unit is, are they putting a hit out on Lord Commander Mormont because that would weaken the Night's Watch? And as we do see, you know, that lack of leadership, especially experienced leadership like the Old Bear, it weakens the watch overall, and it makes it a ripe time to hit it.
Yes, I think you are 100% right. I do think it was like a thought out hit. Like they left those bodies there and they animated those corpses for a reason right there. And with a target. And I want to talk about that target when we get to that part. Because
I need to say with the wall weeping too, my bad.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
With the I think it's interesting that they bring out how warm it is, because later on Jon mentions how cold he is. And it's like, well, like it, that's kind of, I think, when the horror starts setting back in, because we kind of have like a little political sidestep before we get back into what's happening with the others. And the fact that Jon, like right as that story is about to pick up a little bit more, that what's going on down in King's Landing, when we get that news for Jon, well, from Jon's perspective, the fact that he noticeably says it's warm outside.
Yeah.
So then when we get introduced back into the others, for him to say he was freezing, like, well, how did it go from being hot enough for the wall to be weeping to feel like it's, like, in his opinion, like shrinking a bit because it's that hot, to like just being that cold overnight?
Yeah. So the others must be close.
Yes.
They must be close. So when Jon is like on his way back to the wall, he recalls old Nan's tales about the others. And he says, cold and dead they were, and they hated iron and fire and the touch of the sun and every living creature with hot blood in its veins. Holdfast in cities and kingdoms of men all fell before them as they moved south on pale dead horses, leading hosts of the slain. They fed their dead servants on the flesh of human children. Ugh. Yeah. So he's got old Nan's stories coming back, and Lord Commander says, "You're fat, but you're not stupid, boy," to Sam. I felt that was like
shady.
Like, okay, like, first of all, you don't have to go off on him like that. Like, that was nice of you to say he's not stupid, but why'd you have to call him fat?
Right. Like, thanks, I guess.
Right. So they get to they get to the wall, they get back. Bowen Marsh. I can't fucking stand Bowen Marsh. Like,
Oh, fuck Bowen Marsh. Sorry. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say
you
that.
can say whatever you
Okay.
feel.
I don't like Bowen Marsh. All my homies hate Bowen Marsh. But I was gonna say, actually, before we get to that old Nan quote, something just stuck out to me. They did know about the fire. So go back on my point of the thing I asked earlier, if it was common knowledge.
Oh yeah,
well, it is common knowledge.
Fire.
Answered my own question. But I think it's interesting that it says they hated iron and fire, and Jon had a dream of the dead kings coming out, and they're known to have iron blades.
Yes.
So I'm like, and obviously they're using steel swords, not iron swords. So I'm like, is there something a little bit more to that?
I think there is. Because that's the second time we hear about them hating iron. Because Old says it too.
Yeah, and they
telling Bran.
Yeah, and they use steel right now.
Yes.
So it's like, so is it possible that like iron, like raw iron swords, fire, and then Valyrian steel and dragon glass, like maybe there's like another secret weapon out there that they didn't know of?
Or a recipe. Like
it's a recipe.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I know a lot of people don't really look into iron that much, but I think iron is probably the key, because we like focus on Valyrian steel, but we don't know what Valyrian steel is made of. Maybe Valyrian steel is light because it's made of iron. Is iron heavier than steel or lighter?
To be quite honest, I am not sure.
Me either. I don't think Valyrian steel is just iron, but I feel like it's like a lot of magical properties to it as well.
In the case of alloy steels, where a lot of other metals are added as alloying elements, steel would be heavier than iron. However, usually it's the density that kind of determines which one is heavier.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's something about iron that we need to look into further. Maybe I need to do some research.
Yeah, because it gets mentioned a lot of the times when dealing with like things from like the Age of Heroes. I've noticed, like, obviously because it's an outdated form of like metal to be using for weapons.
So when they get back to Castle Black, Bowen Marsh is like, "There's a raven. You got to come now." And Pip, I think it's Pip, is like, "The king's dead." And Jon's just like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" And like they had just overheard it, and they're like, "Jon, I'm sorry. He was your father's friend, wasn't he? They were close as brothers once." Jon wondered if Joffrey would keep his father as the king's hand. It did not seem likely. That might mean Lord Eddard would return to Winterfell, and his sisters as well. He might even be allowed to visit them with Lord Mormont's permission. It would be good to see Arya's grin again and to talk with his father. "I will ask him about my mother," he resolved. "I am a man now. It is past time he told me. Even if she was a whore, I don't care. I want to know." That is so sad.
I want to know something interesting too. The show gave that line to Ned, minus the whore part.
Yes.
But you're a man now. It's past time. I told you, like, next time I see you, I'll talk to you.
In episode 2 of Game of Thrones. Yep.
I totally overlooked that. And I was like, wait a minute. Oh, Ned says that in the show.
Yep.
I was like, that was a nice touch for them to kind of like add in a little bit of mystery with Jon's parenting, that end of things. But I think with it being placed here as well, right after he's talking about Rob being dead, and it's like, Robert killed your daddy, really, and honest about it. But it's sad because it's like Jon has these hopes, like, wait, Joffrey's probably just send my dad home. This might not be such a bad thing. And it's like, Jon, I have some news for you.
Yeah. So Jon goes up to Sir Mormont's tower, and when he gets in, the raven's there, like, corn. And the Lord Commander Mormont is like, no, like, I just gave him corn. Don't listen to him. Like, I just fed him, which I know we both think that the raven is more than just a raven, but they basically, he's like, pour me some wine, pour you some too, because you won't need this. And they tell, well, first he's like, sit down, drink. And Jon is like, it's my father, isn't it? And he said, your father and the king. I won't lie to you. It's grievous news. I never thought to see another king, not at my age, with Robert half my years and strong as a bull. They say the king loved to hunt. The things we love destroy us every time, lad. Remember that. My son loved that young wife of his. Vain woman. If not for her, he would never have thought to sell those poachers. My lord, I don't understand. What happened to my father? I told you to sit. Sit, the raven screamed. Like, okay. So he's basically gonna tell Jon that Ned has been imprisoned and is charged with treason. It is said he plotted with Robert's brothers to deny the throne to Prince Joffrey. And Jon is like, hell no, that could never be my father. And Jon is like, how could they think my father's a traitor? Like, he would never dishonor himself. But then, like, he gets this small voice in his head, but he did have a bastard. And he's thinking about him. And he's like, your mother, what of her? He would not speak her name. Where is the honor in that? And it's like, it's sad because, first of all, if Jon had got this news before he took his vows, I wonder if he would have stayed at the wall. Like, I don't think so. I think he would have went back to
Winterfell.
Yeah.
It went right back. I think I thought what you're saying now that you just like listening to it again, but it's the fact that this RLJ foreshadowing in this chat, especially in like what you just read to me, with the fact that they're talking about Robert's death, they're talking about succession, kind of right to rule, and the fact that Jon's inner monologue is like, well, maybe my father is dishonorable because he's me, and what about my mom? We won't talk about mom. And it's like him questioning his parentage all while like saying discussion. It's like, Jon, it should be you.
George is so fucking brilliant. Like, he's so fucking brilliant with that shit. And it's like, the point of it is that Ned is honorable. Exactly. He didn't have a bastard.
Yeah, and Joffrey's the actual bastard. Well, jury's out on. I'm not sure if they actually were married, but Joffrey is like an actual bastard. Like, and Eddard was well within his rights. He just didn't go about it the smart way. But had he done it, it's kind of makes you wonder what would have happened with the story going forward.
Yeah,
it's so sad. Like,
that's true. And they talk about what was interesting that they really didn't. I don't think they covered this in the show. Is that Lord Mormont actually sends a letter back, like asking, like Ned is a great lord, like he must be allowed to take the black and join us here. And he's like, we need men of Lord Eddard's ability.
And with that being said, the fact that going off of like the letter that he wrote is that him saying, I really wish Tyrion was there to advocate on our behalf, because, if he was sending this letter with Tyrion being there, the odds would have been greater.
Yeah.
Possibly. Even if, what was his name? If Tywin was even there, I'm pretty positive Tywin would have sent Ned to the wall.
If Tywin or Tyrion, if anybody was there.
If anybody would, even if Jaime was there, I think he might have been able to handle it. But I personally think it was Littlefinger that got in Joffrey's ear about killing Ned. Because even before that, when Sansa pleaded for mercy, Cersei also said the same thing, like, yeah, no, we should send it to the wall. That's when Joffrey's like, oh, give me his head. His mom's like, whoa. No, what are you doing? Relax. Pump your brakes, kid. Let's not do that. And Jon kind of indicates that too, that he doesn't even have that faith that his dad will make it to the wall, because he kind of says, he's like, Joffrey's personality, he's like, I don't even, like, Jon knows, like, yeah, his dad's kind of done for on the inside.
Yeah, Jon had him figured out. Like, Jon had Joffrey figured out, like, from the gate. Another interesting thing, and I can't ever pass up the chance to, like, pass on cat shade.
Oh yes, your lady mother. That's what I meant to bring up, because he's like with the Tyrion thing. Yes,
with the Tyrion thing. He says, so the Obert's like, it was a bad thing your lady mother taking him captive, and Jon's like, Lady Stark is not my mother. Tyrion Lannister had been a friend to him. If Lord Eddard was killed, she would be as much to blame as the queen. That's Jon's inner monologue.
Oh, I know. And I'm like, I'm right there with you, buddy.
Me too. And he asks about his sisters, Arya and Sansa. They were with my father. Do you know? And he's like, Pycelle makes no mention of them. But doubtless they'll be treated gently. Lies.
Oh, lies on lies. But yeah, I love the cat shade. But I totally agree with Jon's inner monologue, because Jon says it and Lord Mormont both say, like, they consider Tyrion a friend.
Mm-hmm.
They don't consider him to be an enemy, because they, in my opinion, have that better judge of character, where they can, like, see, like, okay, he definitely has better intentions than the rest of his family. But Kat, the fact that she listened to Littlefinger of all people, like, yeah, no, and it's like, and as she goes along, as you covered in previous chapters, Kat had kind of, like, seen that she was in the wrong.
Yeah.
Even before they got to the Vale, she's like, oh, I messed up here. But it's like, it's kind of too late to turn back now.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I'm kind of like, no, it's not. You didn't even go up the mountain yet. You could still turn around. It's like, you know what? Actually, let's just forget this whole thing happened.
That's that pride. It's that pride.
You got a point, and yeah, you can go home. I'm just gonna go back. All right, see you later, pal. Like, that's what I would have did, because I'd have been like, you know what? I don't have that much pride, because I'd be like, I don't want to be embarrassed, and I'm about to be wild embarrassed by the time I get to the Vale. And then it's like, you brought him here all this way, even though you knew before you even got up the mountain that he didn't do it. Like, girl, if you don't go send him along his way and go bring your butt back home and take care of your children.
Exactly.
Anyways, I love a good cat drag.
Right. So Mormont says this could not have happened at a worse time. If ever the realm needed a strong king, there are dark days and cold nights ahead. I feel it in my bones. And then he looks at Jon and he says, I hope you are not thinking of doing anything stupid, boy. And Jon's like wanting to say, like, that's my motherfucking dad. What are you talking about? And he's like, your duty is here now. Like, your duty is here. Your old life ended when you took the black. And his bird made a raucous echo, black. And Mormont took notice. Whatever they do in King's Landing is none of our concern. When Jon did not answer, the old man finished his wine and said, you're free to go. I'll have no further need of you today. On the morrow, you can help me write that letter. And the bird saying black, I wonder why Mormont took notice of it. Like, what made him take notice of the bird saying black? Is that not a word that he said often or ever?
That's what I'm wondering, but him saying sit, does he say sit often? I would imagine he'd say black before he said sit, since, you guys wear black brothers. I feel like it's a word he probably hears often. So I thought that, maybe it took him by surprise, like, that's a new one.
Yeah. I mean, I think the bird, if, like, let's say the bird is Bloodraven, the bird is basically saying, well, we need you here at the wall. Like, fuck what's going on there. Black, stay here. Black.
Yeah, like, it doesn't matter who sits on that Iron Throne, honestly, buddy. Like, we need you. Like, you got to be here. And it's interesting that Mormont kind of already starts that planting that seed in Jon's head that like, hey, all that Southern politics, that it does not matter. You see what we're about to be up against. Like, that's why he's kind of like, please don't do anything stupid.
Yes.
But at the same time, we have to remind ourselves that Jon's what, like 15, maybe 16, just found out, you know, like
Horrible
he
news.
doesn't know, horrible news. Like his dad's being accused of being a traitor, and more than likely he's going to be executed. Just he knows that. He knows that within himself.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to admit it at this point, but he kind of already hinted at it. He has no idea what's up with Arya and Sansa.
Yeah.
I think he cares more so about Arya than Sansa, but anyways.
Yeah, he's thinking about that. Like he says the girls do not even have that much. He thought their wolves might have kept them safe, but Lady is dead and Nymeria is lost. They're all alone.
Yeah, so he's just like really going through it, and well, we're about to get to what happens next, but so emotionally, like just being a teenager, you got all those hormones, you know, your whole frontal cortex isn't fully developed yet, so your logic and reasoning skills are not there. So, you know, he's just a passionate teenager that just like is hearing this, and then mind you, this is happening immediately after seeing the horrors he just saw above the wall.
Right.
So this is like back to back. This is like a really traumatizing couple hours for Jon when you think about it.
I mean,
and
actually,
then for stupid ass Sir Alistair
I can't stand that bitch, that fucking asshole. Like
him and Bowen Marsh. I want to write like, a burn book like entry about them because I don't like them.
So Gren and Pip and Sam, like they're all like kind of rallying towards Jon's side. Like we asked the Septon to light a candle for your father. Like if you want, we can go to the Weirwoods and pray to the old gods. I'll go with you. And then here comes Alistair Thorne. Basically says not only a bastard, but a traitor's bastard. And they're like all laughing and shit. It says, in the blink of an eye, Jon had vaulted onto the table, dagger in his hand. Pip made grab for him, but he wrenched his leg away and then was sprinting down the table and kicking the bowl from Sir Alistair's hand. Stew went flying everywhere, spattering the brothers. Thorne recoiled. People were shouting, but Jon did not hear them. He lunged at Sir Alistair's face with the dagger, slashing at those cold onyx eyes. But Sam threw himself between them, and before Jon could get around him, Pip was on his back, clinging like a monkey, and Gren was grabbing his arm while Toad wrenched the knife from his fingers. I wish Jon would have sliced his fucking face off.
Me too, if only. One thing I want to say before we even get to stupid Sir Alistair, is Jon has such great friends. The fact that they really like showed him love and support. They're like, you know, like we're here for you. And in my head, Sam and Jon are boyfriends. So he's like, you know, baby, I love you, and we can go pray to the godswood if you want. Like, don't do this. I love you, Jon.
We all need friends like that. Like we need friends like
everyone
that.
needs friends like Pip, Gren, and Sam.
Yes, and
everybody does. Oh, and Toad. Don't forget Toad. But yeah, no, I really do wish he got at least maybe like slice his face, like physically slice his face. I don't even think he actually made contact.
Yeah, he didn't. I think Sam stopped it just in time.
I guess what a good boyfriend, but still like a little nick under the eye.
Should just let him go just a little bit, Sam.
A little blood doesn't hurt anybody.
So they walk him to his sleeping cell, and Lord Mormont's like, you know, boy, I told you not to do nothing stupid. And the bird's like, boy. And Mormont is like, you know, he's disgusted with Jon at this point. And he's like, and to think I had high hopes for you. Like, shut up. Like, bro, he's 15. He's processing some major trauma right now. So they take Jon's knife, they take his sword, and they're like, you can't leave this cell. And they place a guard outside his door to make certain that he wouldn't leave the cell. And his friends weren't allowed to see him. And they did let him have Ghost with him, so he wasn't all alone. And Jon's like all in the dark talking to Ghost. He's like, my father is no traitor. And Ghost just kind of like stares at him like, okay.
Okay, bro. Honestly, I think the only reason they let him keep Ghost because they were like, I mean, are y'all gonna put him somewhere? Because I'm not going near it.
Right. But it says, like you were saying, it grew darker and colder. And Jon's like, I'm not gonna sleep tonight. And he dozed off, but when he woke up, his legs were cramped and stiff. And Ghost was standing at the door on his hind legs, like scratching at the door. And Jon's kind of like, Ghost, like, what the fuck is that? And he's like looking at him, and he has like this silent snarl. And Jon's like, Jon thinks like Ghost has gone crazy. And then Jon feels it. He's like trembling, shaking, cold. He's like, when had it gotten so cold? And we know that Tormund says, like, when the others are around, it's so cold that you can't breathe.
They bring the cold.
They bring the cold. I think the guard is dead, right? The guard gets killed.
Yeah, the way he describes it too is like, he's like, the guard, he thought, they left a man to guard my door. Ghost smells him through the door. That's all it is. And then as Jon slowly gets up to his feet, he's like, his guard was sprawled bonelessly across the narrow steps, looking up at him. Even though he was lying on his stomach, his head had been twisted completely around.
Ooh.
So let's just tack on the trauma. Trauma. Let's add a little bit of trauma seasoning to Jon's day.
Boneless, and they say bonelessly. So he must have been twisted really, like sprawled bonelessly. He must have been twisted really fucking bad.
Yeah, and like just I couldn't imagine. And I'm assuming, even though he doesn't name the guard, he knows who it is. So just like dogs bugging out, and he's like looking like, oh, you're like, what? Relax, and it's like it's not that serious. It's the guard, and then he's like, oh no, it is that serious.
And so Jon is kind of like, like this is the Lord Commander's tower. Like this fucking tower is guarded night and day. Like there's no way anybody like this couldn't really happen. Like this can't happen. But Jon winds up like taking the sword from the sheath of the guard, and like Ghost kind of runs up the steps towards the Lord Commander's chambers, and like they hear the raven like shrieking for corn. Who's there? Then he saw it, a shadow in the shadows, sliding toward the inner door that led to Mormont's sleeping cell. A man shaped all in black, cloak and hooded, but beneath the hood, its eyes shone with icy blue radiance. Ghost leapt. Man and wolf went down together with neither scream nor snarl, rolling, smashing into a chair, knocking over a table laden with papers. Mormont's raven was flapping overhead, screaming, corn, corn, corn. Jon felt as blind as a maester Aemon, keeping the wall to his back. He ripped down the curtain and moonlight flooded the solar. He glimpsed black hands buried in white fur, swollen dark fingers tightening around his direwolf's throat. Ghost was twisting and snapping, legs flailing in the air, but he could not break free. Jon had no time to be afraid. He threw himself forward, shouting, bringing down the longsword with all his weight behind it. Steel sheared through sleeve, skin, and bone, and yet the sound was wrong somehow. The smell that engulfed him was so queer and cold he almost gagged. He saw arm and hand on the floor, black fingers wriggling in a pool of moonlight. Ghost wrenched free of the other hand and crept away, red tongue lolling from his mouth. Honey, don't that sound disgusting?
Yes. Oh my gosh, we were talking about it. Like, oh, yeah, the descriptions that the descriptions that George uses. Honestly, he kind of looks like Kit Harington, like a young Kit Harington when he has his glasses on. That's totally irrelevant to the scene. But I wanted to think of something cute because the scene is so gross.
It is gross, but that way, black fingers wriggling.
Oh my gosh. In his mouth though, I'm like, bleh. Like that's so disgusting. Like, ew. Yeah. And what gets me, like, why did it take Mormont so long to wake up? Like, they said ghosts knocked over like a table. They were bumping into a bunch of stuff. You got a bird screaming. I'm pretty sure Jon was probably like ah! Like or something before, like to hype him up before he like actually lunged at him. And I'm like, bro, you still ain't waking up yet? Like
Yes.
Sir, I need backup. Like, Mormont, I need backup out here, please.
Like, yo, Jon is like going to war. Like, Jon and Ghost are in his fucking chambers going to war with a Wight, and he's just sleeping through that shit. Like, and Ghost, not even are you hearing all this rumbling and fumbling, the Raven is freaking out.
Yeah, so it's like there's so much noise going on. How are you sleeping through this?
Yes.
And another thing I realized, Othor is like the really big one too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, going back to my new conspiracy theory that they were like sending out a hit, they're like, yeah, let's get the really big guy because he's gonna be really like, because that obviously like dead weight is really heavy, and then put that on somebody that's a lot bigger of a person, it's gonna be even harder to kind of fight back.
Yeah.
And we see that with Jon and Ghost, like they both needed each other, because without the other, one of them would have died, or both.
Yeah.
Like, they saved each other. And I think that's so cute. I'm like, oh, I love this connection.
Me too.
A man and his dog.
So Lord Mormont finally awakens, and he's naked and groggy and like standing in the doorway with an oil lamp in his hand. And Jon like tries to like yell at him, but like he can't, and like he's staggering around. And the Raven is saying, burn, burn, burn. Unprompted. He's not mocking anybody. He's saying that on his own. And that's how Jon realizes to burn them. Through the Raven. So somebody is in that bird.
Yes, and again, I think it's Blood Raven. Not only that, they always describe that bird as being really old and large. Like, it's like, they don't know how old it is. I know they don't mention how old that bird is, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
And not only that, most of the other birds all live in the rookery. Why is this the one bird that just kind of hangs out with like the Lord Commander?
Yeah, that is definitely Blood Raven. I 100% agree that the crow is Blood Raven.
Oh, like, actually, facts. I was gonna, when the last lines of this chapter to me are so haunting. When Jon's like, "Let it burn," he prayed as the cloth smothered the corpse. "Gods, please, please let it burn." That to leave on that type of cliffhanger is so like menacing, because you're like, oh my god, do they make it out? Are they okay? Did it burn? Like, even though if you were paying attention throughout the chapter that it was meant, the fact of burning them, this is I think the third time that it's been mentioned, like the fire needs to destroy this reanimated dead person.
Corpse.
Wight. I don't know why I forgot the word Wight.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Oh gosh. No, I was just gonna say this chapter is so good.
It is so good, but like that line, like it is a big cliffhanger, but also think of it as Jon being a Targaryen and saying, "Let it burn," he prayed. Corpse, let it burn, he prayed as the cloth smothered the corpse. Gods, please, please let it burn. I feel like that is dragon foreshadowing that Jon is going to be atop a dragon burning some Wights.
Ooh, I like that. And also, speaking of the Targaryens, I hate that the show convoluted this theory that people think, oh, well, you have to be fireproof to be a Targaryen.
Oh, God.
And Jon here, when he literally grabs a burning drape and throws it. His hands get burned, and it affects him throughout the entire series, like these burns on his hands. Like he constantly mentions about that same hand like stiffening up at times and like having to make sure he's like kind of flexing the muscles to keep it like, you know, like still functioning properly. And look how like the circumstances around it, like the fact that for me personally, whenever he mentions the hands throbbing, it kind of always subtly brings me back to this chapter.
Yeah, it does.
Like it always, like I feel like it's George's way of kind of slowly, like without explicitly like bringing the others in. If you have been like kind of like paying attention to the clues, it's like, okay, yeah, let's not forget the others. Let's not forget the others. They're still the big threat.
He's so good at that though. Like he's really so good at that, because if it was reverse, would it even still be the same story? Would it even be so loved as it is, where the others were in the forefront and everything else was in the back? Would it still?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think it would be the same.
No, it wouldn't have the same like weight to it.
Yeah, not at all. But this is a very, very, very good chapter, and we went through a lot in this chapter. Was there anything you wanted to add?
Oh, yes, I know. I just wanted to bring up the fact that Mormont kind of shaded his son a little bit.
Oh, about the vanity.
Yeah, because I think that do you think that Jorah and Jon are actually going to meet eventually and have like a discussion over like the rights to Longclaw at some point?
Yeah, I do think they'll meet. I think they'll meet. I don't know if they'll discuss the rights of Longclaw.
Okay.
But I do think that they'll meet. Now, I would like them to discuss the rights of Longclaw, but like I had heard this theory that Jon was going to get Blackfire, and I'm like, no. Longclaw is Jon's sword.
Yeah.
Like,
and do we even know what happened to Blackfire?
Like it's over in Essos. They think that Illyrio has it, and he's giving it to Aegon.
Oh, I could see that.
And then Jon's gonna somehow get it, but I feel like Longclaw is Jon's sword.
Yeah, I think Longclaw is his sword. And one thing I think is interesting, since Bloodraven's been brought up multiple times, is the fact that Dark Sister is hanging out there with Bran.
Yeah.
And obviously Bran's not going to wield it. So it makes me wonder, is it possible, say Illyrio does give like Blackfire to Aegon, if Dany somehow becomes in possession of Dark Sister, and we kind of have like, rather than 2 girls, 1 guy for the 3 heads of the dragon, possibly 2 boys, 1 girl. Because even with Aegon not being Rhaegar's son, which I don't think he is, I subscribe to the Blackfire conspiracy. It still makes him a Targaryen. Black or red, it's still a dragon.
Black or red, a dragon is still a dragon. I just can't see Dany being like a sword fighter.
Oh, I can't either, but I think it'd just be cool just to have her wield it like on like dragon back, just like I can just see her just like in like a badass suit of armor or something on Drogon with like the vintage like Valyrian saddles that they used to have, wielding dark sister. Like I just want that for Dany.
I mean,
want her
girl,
to be like
same.
like all like Aegon like and his sisters come again, but all in just her.
I honestly think that Arya is gonna get Dark Sister.
I could see that. That was my other option because she has more training. And
she's Bran's Dark Sister.
Yeah, and then in the show they gave her the cat's paw dagger, I think, in place of it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I feel like they still could have brought Dark Sister into the story.
It was in their, it was right there in their hand. It was in their damn hand when they just didn't do it.
I know.
And they never brought Dawn in. Like, that's one thing about A Song of Ice and Fire is there's some badass swords and we don't see them. But we're going to see them in House of the Dragon. Like, we'll get to see Blackfire and Dark Sister. And
honestly, with all these spin-off shows, I need I need something with Bloodraven in it. I don't even think it doesn't even have to be Dunkin' Egg. It's just something with Bloodraven in it.
The Blackfire Rebellions, like the first Blackfire Rebellion.
Oh, that's the one I want. I need that. I need Damon. I need Bitter Seal. I need Shira. I need all the great bastards, all of them.
Yes. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. Do not forget to check out Arah's channel, iEatZebra on YouTube, and check her out on Twitter at iEatZebra. Links will be in the description box. And as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. And we will see you guys next week. Or actually, we'll see you Friday. Bye.
Bye.